Hello, everyone. I haven't done a tier list in a while, so I figured it was time to do one. However, the schedule for me has been pretty hectic as of late. I've got a lot of things on the back burner right now that I like to get to that's taking up a lot more time. So I didn't really have the time I needed today to compile the kind of list that I wanted. So we're using a pre-made one, and it's not the most inclusive list. I think there's a few that could have been added to this, but I felt it was an interesting list because it's all for the mini bots in G1. And the idea is, of course, we'll tier list the mini bots to give you an idea of which ones are good and bad. But beyond just that, I feel like it's kind of an interesting thought process because I feel like on the whole, if you look at the entirety of G1 Transformers, I feel like the mini bots are like right there in like the butter zone of like right in the middle. Like they're not, for what they are, none of them are terrible, but none of them are outstanding either. So it's kind of interesting to me when they're all kind of in that same middle road. How do you designate which ones are top tier and which ones are bottom tier? If you're breaking it down like that, someone's got to be at the bottom, right? So keep that in mind. In this situation, I am basically just determining which of them are better or worse in a nutshell of themselves. Overall, I don't think any minibot is particularly bad per se. So, yeah, I felt like this was a little bit of a weird twist on it. So, let's go over this. Like I said, it's not a complete list. Things like Glyph and Tap Out are missing. Puffer is missing. A few like of the really random weird ones out of like Brazil are missing. We can't do literally every single repaint, but I want to throw a mention to some of the more well-known ones that are out there. There's no G2 ones in here either, because I think the chrome adds a different aesthetic that could have been worth pointing out. But this does cover all the molds. This does cover all the major characters. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to cover it as well as this list will allow us. So we start off with Beachcomber and Oh, and I should say, by the way, since the tier list doesn't credit them, Sabertron.com for all these little preview pictures. This is the thumbnail they use for all their galleries. So credit to them. All right. Let's begin with Beachcomber. Beachcomber is pretty bog standard as far as mini bots go. Head flips up, legs flip out. Most are pretty much in that same territory. He doesn't do a bad job of it. I do think he looks good. The blue and the gray work pretty well. For an outdoor buggy, I don't think the color scheme works exactly. It's definitely not a realistic color scheme, but it adds some needed blue to that year two mini bot lineup. And yeah, it's a nice, chill, cool, calm color scheme, which very much defines Beachcomber. So I think it works pretty well in character for him. At the moment, right now, I think he's spot on to put right in the middle, and we can use Beachcomber rather as kind of a gauge between like what goes where, what's better, and what's worse. The next one up is Brawn. And Brawn, I feel like, is cool as a character, but as a toy, I definitely feel like it's probably one of the lower of the mini bots. Like I said, none of the mini bots are especially bad, but looking him over, like this is one of those toys. Him and Windcharger, uh, Windcharger, Huffer, and oh, who else? Gears. They were all designed by an outside company that was later bought. These molds were used, and then the other molds that toy company produced got used for a completely different line, which we'll talk about at some point, I'm sure. It's a really weird history. Needless to say, Brawn never really fits in quite as well as the other mini bots, so he's a little bit on the weird side. I don't like the scrawny legs. I don't like the little tiny like T-Rex arms, and I don't like how it's very hard to stand him up because he doesn't have like flat, wide feet of any kind. So if anyone's going to end up in the flea market bin, it's going to be him. And I hate that because Brawn I like as a character, but as a toy, it's definitely lacking. Still waiting for him to get one of those like small size deluxes. By the way, like he's overdue. Bumblebee. All right, so classic Bumblebee one. Whether you're talking original head, remolded head, chrome from Generation 2. He's probably one of the most solid mini-bots, and obviously one of the most popular. It's one of the few. It's only one of 3 toys in Generation 2, or Generation 1, sorry, that was produced for all 3 years of the first run. So credit where credit's due. Bumblebee has very strong staying power. I feel like up in premium is fair for him for now. It's a weird toy. It's got some oddities to him, but it is charming. Like, it has its own aesthetic. And honestly, I kind of like that little squat thing that him and Cliffjumper did. Like, the little tiny, like, squished car. I think it stands out and has a little bit more personality than, like, bog standard, you know, dune buggy or bog standard truck. You know, I would say the same thing. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit weird. So the whoever made this tier list included the recolors of Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, like the incidental ones, and there's no real reason to rank them any differently. So it's a little bit weird. There's also a Wheelie variant in here for some reason. That's another weird choice. You know, that's where I would have put in Glyph and Tap Out, right? So let's ignore this. So, sorry, my sinuses are acting up. Anyway, let's ignore that, and we'll actually think of this as Glyph, because it's got Glyph's head. It's the wrong color, but ignore that. I'm gonna put Glyph up in premium as well. I do think it's cool to use the original Bumblebee head as a completely new character, and I like the color scheme on Glyph. I like this color scheme on Tap Out as well, though it doesn't have the same benefit of using the fresh head that Bumblebee has. All right. Speaking of fresh head, let's talk about Bumper, the one called Bumblejumper. So for you don't know the history of the character, the non-character, Bumblejumper was what fans used to call this one weird figure that was like a squared off car, like Cliffjumper, but it had a completely different head that looked and kind of resembled more of Bumblebee's animated head than it did either of the original toys. Now, the head itself was completely unique. Today, we call the character Bumper. It's about as close. It's about as close as we're gonna get to the old Bumblejumper thing. It was an amusing figure. Now, its legacy, its lore is better than the toy itself is, right? So, we'll put it up here as well, right? All right. So I think that's fair enough. All right. Cliffjumper. So it's basically Bumblebee again. The question here is how much. At this point, I will admit, Bumblebee and Cliffjumper aesthetically the engineering is exactly the same. So at that point, it's literally just personal preference, which one goes where for you. So if you like Cliffjumper's design better, there's no fault in that. This is all opinion, by the way. Everything I do is opinion, right? So I'm not as crazy about Cliffjumper as I am Bumblebee. Bumblebee is this super cute little round car. Cliffjumper is this like squished, and it doesn't give it a unique aesthetic, but I don't like it as well as I do Bumblebee. When I put Cliffjumper here, he's probably going to be closer to the top of retail release by the time we're done. Understand, that's just basically where I kind of view him. Like, he is not as I don't like him as well as Bumblebee, but it's still the same figure, so I have to put him at least somewhere close. So they'll balance themselves out. The only reason Bumper, being a similar car, makes it a little bit higher on the list is because the lore behind Bumper is interesting. So, like, the toy itself is more interesting to me. That said, when I take this yellow Cliffjumper and we pretend that it's Tap Out, the green Bakhan repaint, I am going to put it just a little bit higher because, once again, it's all personal preference. I like the color scheme on that toy. I would really like to see... I'd like to see a modern incarnation is what I'd like to see. All the uses of that figure all the retools and remolds and repaints of that Cliffjumper, and it was never done in Tap Out. Weird to me. So I like Tap Out a little bit better than I like Cliffjumper. That's purely visual aesthetic. That's purely visual aesthetic and personal preference, right? Cosmos. Cosmos was a pretty clever little figure for his time. Not only is he super unique amongst the mini-bots and amongst Transformers in general, yeah, he's a old school UFO. The kind of UFO that couldn't hide anywhere, but yet he has chosen that as an alt mode, as a disguise mode. The toy itself is pretty simple, as all the mini-bots are, but again, I feel like there's something really charming to it, especially because it is so unique. And yeah, it's a toy that really doesn't do anything wrong, you know? Looks fine, has a good color scheme, doesn't fall over. Hi, Brawn. No, I think it's one of the better ones. I think Cosmos deserves to be up there at the top. And it's not just me high on the Velocitron one. No, seriously, I really like him as a toy. All right, Gears. All right, we're into our second of the intruders of the mini bots. Gears is a lot more standard as far as Transformer design and aesthetic goes. So there's no real shock or surprises to him. He's pretty simple. But that said, he's also pretty solid. And I think the aesthetic works better for him, like that robotic aesthetic, I think works better for that heavier design than it does for Brawn. So I'm going to put him up. Actually, I'm going to put him like below retail right now. I mean, that might be a negotiable spot later on. I might rethink that, but for now, I don't think that's a bad spot for him. All right, Hubcap, the repaint, resculpting of Cliffjumper. It's a weird choice, knowing that they did a yellow Cliffjumper, and then for year 3 they did just another yellow Cliffjumper. I think that really like takes Hubcap down quite a few notches. It's not an interesting release. It's repetitive, and again, I think it's one of those that gets confused for Bumblejumper. Because I think a lot of people even forget that Hubcap exists because he didn't appear in the show. I don't even think during like the charge against Trypticon. I don't even remember him appearing there. And that's like the only time any of the season 3 mini-bots showed up, except for like one more, like no. Outback got one shot, and then Pipes got another. But like, yeah, like he's such a nothing. I think people forgot about him. I do find him a little bit repetitive. I find the yellow Cliffjumper to be a little bit more interesting, despite the new head. But because like this came 2 years later and they basically did the same thing, I'm gonna put him a lot lower. So not as interesting, even though it's got some new sculpting to it. All right, Huffer, our third of the outliers. I wish I could remember that toy company's name off the top of my head, but that's a story that just like came out not too long ago. So like a lot of the details are escaping me right now. But yeah, Huffer, another one that wasn't designed directly by Hasbro or Takara, carries that same kind of aesthetic to it too. It's okay. It's okay. It's not the most thrilling of figures. Especially because they had all this bulk with the front section of the cab and they did nothing with it. Like, that's kind of bothersome to me. It's okay, but it's not like terribly interesting. And there's an oddness to it. Especially because it does the thing where like it does this thing that Bumblebee and Cliffjumper do too, like do their engineering, like the arms hinge like in the middle of their body. But I think they pull it off better than Huffer does. So like right now, I'm thinking bargain bin Huffer right now. No, it's just weird. Like you can really tell like when you point out that those were designed by someone outside of the companies. Yeah, you can really tell like how different they feel from the other mini bots. It's weird. All right, Outback. So retool from it is still okay. So we got a retool here from Brawn, and he comes with a little bit of an interesting bit because it's the only Minibot that actually came with a weapon accessory. He comes with a gun that fits in the vehicle mode. So already you've got a little bit more play than you do with Brawn, and then you have the head sculpt. I really feel like, see, like when you remold Cliffjumper into Hubcap, you're changing, one face for a slightly different face. It's not that interesting. The faces on all these on these 4 outliers are so bland that the remolding helps a lot with them. I feel like that automatically takes them up a lot of notches. It also helps that Outback kind of wears his weirdness a little bit better. But it's still that scrawny leg, T-Rex arm thing. I'm going to put him higher, but I'm not going to put him that much higher because I feel like a lot of the flaws that toy has are still present. But the new head helps, and so does the extra accessory. So it's actually doing a little bit to pick it up. All right, Pipes. Pipes is actually a really interesting retool. So it's not just the fact that it's a retooled head from Huffer. The engineering of it actually changes. Pipes actually works quite a bit differently than Huffer does. And it's like to a surprising degree, and it helps that toy a lot. As opposed to like Huffer, where I feel like there's some missed opportunity and it's like not done as well as it could be. Pipes is actually done pretty well. It actually takes that mold and reinvents it a little bit. So I'm actually inclined to put it quite a bit higher. And by quite a bit higher, I mean like that a bit higher. Like to the point where I like think this is more appropriate now. If I'm really thinking about this now, because I really like Pipes as a figure a lot more than I do Gears. It's a lot more interesting as a figure. Powerglide. Powerglide is fascinating. So aside from being like our first aerial Autobot outside, well, I can't even say that because we had Jetfire before, right? Okay, so it's a rare aerial Autobot back in the day. So it's a weird design. It's an interesting and it's a different design than we got from a lot of Transformers at the time, especially the Minibots. What was unique about his design is how much play his arms had, because it was like those, beneath air, like because it was the engines underneath the wings unfolding into the arms. You actually had like a shoulder rotation. You had like a little bit of a little bit of elbow work that worked into this toy. There's engineering, like there's actual like articulation that was useful. Aside from the fact he stood out so much for the other Minibots, and then the fact that the wings do something a little bit better and more interesting than just, becoming a wing pack like a Seeker would, like almost every Jet figure did. I love that. So no real shock. I'm going to put him up Holy Grail. I'm tempted to make him like the best of the Minibots, just because of how unique he is and how much function he has. Really good one. I'm like kind of like tapping my finger. It's like waiting for like where is my new one, Hasbro? Where's my new Powerglide? It's been a while. It's been a long while since we've had a good Powerglide. So I'm kind of expecting him to be up somewhere soon. All right. They put another Bumblebee in here. This is just like the G1 head. So we're just going to put that one right there. Like I said, it's not my list, so it's a little bit weird. All right. Seaspray. So Seaspray is not bad. I don't think he's terrible. Like, again, it's interesting. He's a hovercraft, so it's a little bit different. I feel like the Minibots were a good way for them to kind of experiment with alt modes that they didn't want to put like full figures into. So you got a lot of weird things, UFOs, like UFOs and hovercrafts and bizarre ones, which is fun. Yeah, I don't think he's like terribly exciting, but I don't think he's bad either. So I think I want to put him just above Cliff. Or why do I keep calling Beachcomber Cliffjumper? Head is not completely attached today, so I like him. I like him enough to put him right there in the middle. Just doesn't do anything like terribly unique is all. All right, Swerve. Let my bias of Swerve, thanks to IDW, aside for a second. Swerve is again like a decent figure, and again, we have that heavy retooling both to the head and the chest to put him a little bit more in line with standard Transformer designs, but it's still that simple and solid design that the original Gears toy had. That said, it is a marked improvement over it, so we're putting him one notch above. And now that I'm... How much do I really like Pipes? I feel like I'm doing... I don't want to take him, like... I didn't want to take him too far away from Huffer, but man, he, like, when I take a look at this list again, like, I really just want to kind of put him right there. I think that's more fair. I think that's more fair. Yeah, boom. We'll even do that. We'll downgrade Bumper. I guess if I downplay Yellow Cliffjumper for being repetitive, I have to downplay almost Cliffjumper, almost Yellow Cliffjumper too, right? All right, Tailgate. All right, a remold of the Windcharger figure. Windcharger, like that mold itself is again really simple. Pull arms out, flip legs out, you're done. Swerve adds a little bit more to it, of course, because it's got the new tooling on the face and the chest. It looks a lot better. But it's still pretty simplistic. It's not terribly interesting. It's not terribly unique either. I think it goes right there, the middle of the retail. I think that's okay. Is that fair? I think that's fair. I'm still doubting where I'm putting Pipes. We'll come back to Pipes here in a bit. Warpath. All right. This was actually cool. We had like outside of like an army Jeep, we didn't have any military vehicles in the Autobots before Warpath. So there's our first heavy hitter for the Autobots. He's a bizarre toy. He's a super bizarre toy. Like the way his shoulders sit, like those proportions. He's got a lot of weirdness to him. Definitely unique, but also just like odd. So I'm not... He's a weird one to place. I don't think he's bad. But I don't know. I would say let's maybe there. I like Warpath enough just as function of a figure, but it is just like he has some real weird... He just like... there's something odd. There's always something odd about how Warpath looks as a toy, but I still respect how unique it is for the Minibots and for the Autobots in general at the time. All right. We had to get to this moment. Where does Wheelie go? And I'm sure a lot of people want me to flea market Wheelie. I don't think Wheelie is that bad. The head cover and the like built-in face and the high shoulders, that does make his proportions look a little bit weird. I like the vehicle mode, that like land bullet that he turns into. And I don't think he's that bad as like a Transformer function to him. That said, he's not great either. I think I've got a lot of things here that work better overall. Like I said, I don't think any of the Minibots are bad for what they are in and of their time. But comparing to other Minibots, yeah. I'm going to put low bargain bin. And the orange face one, same way. I don't discriminate by color of face. It's just okay. You know? The toy itself is okay. I don't think it's as bad as people claim, but like honestly, that's the cartoon talking. It's your dislike of Wheelie as a character that would put him above Brawn, who is what I feel, like impartially, as impartial as I can, I feel like is a worse toy and worse design. So there's my thinking, my logic. That leaves us with Windcharger. Now here's the Now here we go. So again, he's one of the outliers. He wasn't designed by Hasbro or Takara, and he is that same simple pull out arms, flip out legs, two-step transformation. But this time we pair it with the fact that it's got this very blank, flat head. See, you can complain about the flat head on Ironhide all you want. At least they put a sticker face on there that had details on it and like actual like shapes and definitions. This is too random geometric shapes smashed together to look like a face, and it's just as flat as that sticker. I'm not a big fan of this toy. I'm not a big fan of this one. It just, the vehicle mode is kind of cool, but it's just very bland. Like between engineering and overall look of the robot, he's just doing very, very little. And honestly, yeah, I put him at the bottom of the list. It's how much I appreciate the retooling in Tailgate. Same simple figure. I think the colors are better. I think like the red and the gray is just a little bit drab, and even at this point, the red and the gray was just like so overplayed in the Autobots. So like I don't really feel like that was doing anything special. All right, but I feel like that's my list. Do I do it? Okay, just get up there. Just get up there. If anyone asks, a friend let you in. We'll put him in the high roller club after all. I can't help it. I really like pipes. So I think I'm gonna call that my list. Like I said, if we went through all the different repaints there are that are actual distinct characters, this thing would be loaded. But, you know, and there'd be a lot more to talk about, but it'd also be a lot more repetitive. So I think this is a decent enough mix to kind of give you an idea of where I would put all of the Minibots, at least for personal preferences. So I'm sure I put your favorite way too low. I know I did. Please feel free to berate me in the comments over it and tell me that I am a horrible person for it. And for those of you who have not been completely turned off by this, thank you for watching, and I hope I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.